Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I'm up here for a second time because, as I have stated and as the defendant's attorney has stated, Mr. Ramirez and I have the burden of proof today. And so, the law allows me to come up here a second time to once again clarify why Officer Waldman was negligent, why he acted with excessive force on December 7th, 1996. It's interesting that the attorney has highlighted the fact that both officers have testified to some of the same facts. It's also interesting to note that Mr. Ramirez didn't have a friend there that day, didn't have somebody to come up with a story that would make sense, to come up with a story with somebody else. He has testified on his own, and what he has said today has been consistent with the evidence that you have heard. It's interesting to note all of the inconsistencies and the motivations for tweaking the story that Officer Waldman and Officer Levy have had today. First off, they claim that Mr. Ramirez came at Officer Levy with a knife in his right hand. But you heard today that Mr. Ramirez is left-handed. He told you that he can't do very much with his right hand. He might be able to catch a softball with his right hand, with a glove on his right hand. He can do a few things with his right hand. Most of us can do something with our non-dominant hand. But surely, if Mr. Ramirez were to attack somebody with a knife, he would have it in his strong hand. He would be holding it in his left hand. Also, the officers testified, and the reports, the police incident reports show, once again, that that knife that was found on the scene did not have any fingerprints on it, did not have any blood on it, and it was closed. How could an unconscious man fold up a locked blade and wipe the blood and fingerprints off of the knife? Another inconsistency to note is the police report. The sergeant who wrote up the police report stated that when he got onto the scene, both of the vehicles could easily drive away. And yet, both Officer Waldman and Officer Levy testified that when the vehicle stopped, Mr. Ramirez had cut them off so that they couldn't go anywhere, and that's why they got out of the car. How is it, then, that when the sergeant came onto the scene, both cars could easily drive away? Finally, speaking of motivations, Officer Waldman knew that he had to come up with a plausible story, a reason why he shot my client. He had to come up with a knife. Because simply shooting a man who was engaged in a fist fight would clearly be excessive force. And so he had to come up with a knife, to come up with some reason so that he wouldn't get in trouble, so that he wouldn't lose his job for shooting Mr. Ramirez in the back. And finally, the attorney for the defendants highlighted the difference between the practices from the medical doctors, Mr. Angris, and the doctor for the defendants. They said that Mr. Angris did not have as highly tuned of a practice, and therefore you shouldn't believe his testimony. But I would like to say, I think that's even more of a reason that you should believe him today. Because the doctor for the defendants has made his living, as he stated, on forensic pathology in the defense of police officers. He's written a book about his work that he's made a lot of money from. He testifies. Basically, his full-time job is coming up with ways to protect, to get police officers, off the hook for their actions. I agree, he has a lot more experience in forensics pathology. But I think his views are a little bit tainted because of where his money comes from. Thank you.